I'm going to keep this straightforward because buying a big-screen digital sign is a decision you don't want to rush. You're probably weighing whether a 55-inch Sony panel will actually make your messages clearer, save you time on content updates, and fit within the budget you set for a storefront or office lobby. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I want to do is walk through the real-world setup, daily usability, and the hidden trade-offs that most spec sheets gloss over, so you can decide if this is the right fit before you click Add to Cart. First off, the FW-55BZ30L is positioned as a commercial-grade display, not a home entertainment TV. That matters because Sony has tuned the panel for continuous operation, with a brightness of 440 candelas per m that holds up well in typical indoor lighting. In a retail environment I've seen, the screen sits behind a glass partition and still manages to keep text readable from a few meters away, even when the store lights are on full. If your use case is a small coffee shop menu board or a corporate notice board, that level of brightness is more than enough. However, if you plan to mount it in a space with a lot of natural sunlight pouring in, you might notice some washout during the brightest hours. In those situations, adding a light shading visor or moving the unit away from direct windows can mitigate the issue. The Wi-Fi connectivity is where the Sony experience starts to feel different from a generic monitor. You can upload images, videos, or a whole playlist straight from a web interface without needing a separate media player or a PC hooked up all the time. In practice, that means your marketing team can change a promotion in a matter of minutes using a laptop or even a tablet on the same network. For businesses that rotate content frequently, this saves a lot of time and reduces the chance of a forgotten USB stick sitting on a shelf. On the flip side, the Wi-Fi setup isn't as plug-and-play as some consumer smart TVs. You'll need to spend a few minutes entering the network credentials, and if your router is on a crowded channel, you might see occasional hiccups during large file transfers. Most users report that once the connection is stable, it stays that way, but it's worth checking your network health before you rely on it for 24/7 operation. Now, let's talk about the picture itself. The 4K resolution on a 55-inch panel gives you crisp lettering and sharp images, which is essential when you're displaying brand logos or product details that need to be legible from a distance. In a test I ran at a co-working space, a promotional slide with a 12-point font stayed readable from about 6 feet away, and the colors stayed vivid without any noticeable banding. That said, the display doesn't support HDR or wide color gamut modes, so if you're hoping to showcase high dynamic range video content, you'll see a more muted contrast compared to consumer-grade HDR TVs. For most signage applications, think static graphics, simple video loops, and text-heavy announcements. That limitation isn't a deal-breaker, but it's something to keep in mind if your content strategy leans heavily on cinematic visuals. One practical strength that often gets overlooked is the built-in scheduling software. Sony's web portal lets you set start and end times for each piece of content, so the screen can automatically switch from a morning welcome message to an evening promotional loop without any manual intervention. This is a genuine time saver for small teams that can't afford a dedicated signage operator. The downside is the interface feels a bit dated. It's functional but not as sleek as some newer cloud-based platforms. If you prefer a more modern dashboard with analytics, you might need to pair this display with a third-party signage service, which adds an extra subscription cost. Port selection is another area where the reality deviates from the headline. The FW-55BZ30L includes 2 HDMI inputs and a USB-A slot for local media playback, which covers the basics. However, there's no DisplayPort or USB-C, so if your existing media server outputs over those standards, you'll need an adapter. The USB port can read from a flash drive, but it only supports a limited range of video codecs, meaning you might have to re-encode files before they play smoothly. For most businesses that already use MP4 or MOV files, this isn't a huge hurdle, but it's an extra step that can catch newcomers off guard. So, who should actually buy this Sony sign? If you run a boutique retail store, a cafe, a small office, or an educational department that needs a reliable, bright screen for announcements, this model hits the sweet spot. Its durability for continuous use, the decent brightness for indoor settings, and the Wi-Fi content management make it a practical choice without the premium price tag of larger, enterprise-level signage solutions. It also suits anyone already comfortable with Sony's ecosystem, Perhaps because they have other Sony commercial displays and want to keep the brand consistency. Who should skip it? If you're looking for a home theater upgrade, a gaming